So as a buyer, we've bought about 2,700 apartments across Miami the past decade, I think more than anybody else on earth. So we have a pretty good view into what's happening in the markets from a local demand perspective. So I think from the operation side, if you turned off CNBC, didn't think about the Fed, didn't think about what was going on, unfortunately, in Ukraine or in Israel, and you just thought about what was going on in the Miami market, rents are super stable and operations are good, meaning most properties in Miami are 95 to 96% occupied. I would say the same thing goes for Broward and Palm Beach counties. I would say the overall rent growth perspective has changed where in 2021, 2022, we were getting about 20% rent growth on an annual basis. So rents today are about 40% higher than they were 2.5 years ago in Miami. So that's been a tremendous amount of growth that kind of pulled forward growth, and now we're at more of a point of stability. But I think the data that I focus is on the consumer at our properties and what is their real income. And I talk to other investors and they seem to think, oh, Kendall must have incomes 15 miles from downtown Miami, probably an hour and 15 on the commute time. Those incomes now are $125,000 for households living in properties that were built 30 and 40 years ago. Those rents used to be $1,600. Now they're $2,400, $2,500. But it's not necessarily the same person living there, but the incomes used to be $60,000 or $70,000. So through inflation, wages are higher, and through in-migration, people can work from home some or have higher incomes, they're making more money. When I look at my peers in the space who may have gotten a little bit more aggressive on the leverage, we're typically between 50 and 70% leveraged. So we have good enough cushion and a lot of fixed rate debt that's still sub 4% interest we feel good about. Some floating rate loans that are 8% that are thankfully still manageable because of the rent growth Florida's presented to us along the way during the business plans. I think the distress is going to be really on the fringes. I think most people are well enough capitalized, and the investors we have that are talking about selling, it's let's sell this for a 20% IRR over the last 4 years instead of getting a 30% IRR we could have had 18 months ago. And so there's still money on the table, but it's a matter of, do you want to ring the register now, or do you think things are going to pop back up quickly? I think I'm of the mindset that the Fed may cut rates 75 basis points this year, they may cut it 50. I don't think they're cutting it 150. So until I'm getting long-term 10-year fixed rate mortgages at 4.5% again, I think we're in a market where you still have to be pretty careful, and the guys that over-levered will have to sell, but there's so much capital of people have raised $500 million funds, $2 billion funds that want to play in the space still because they know the stability of the occupancy and the demand, that I don't see there being real steals. But I try to, throughout my career, find somebody else's mistake. And we've bought 4 properties the last 7 years. The day we bought them, these are properties of 150 to 400 apartments that had no website. When people think about what simple technology you don't need a Nest thermostat, you don't need a self-driving car, you simply need a website to advertise your apartment community. And those properties that you manage well, you can take care of day to day. You can fix what's broken and grow. I think the people are having trouble. They're running out of money and they don't have money to put on a new roof. Well, if you have a roof that's been leaking for 2 years, over 770 apartments that I've been bidding for the last year, and the seller's still holding out for more money, their asset is physically deteriorating. And at some point, they're gonna have to be a motivated buyer. The last thing I'll say is, what I've really learned in the past 6 months is how strong the American homeowner is. Because the American homeowner, for the most part, owns their house cash or owns their house with a mortgage between 3 and 4% interest. They may have bronze handcuffs, meaning they can't upgrade to a 5-bedroom house out of their 3-bedroom house because they don't want to give up their 3% interest rate mortgage and get a 7% mortgage. But as Manny said, about half of the apartment debt in America is going to roll in the next 5 years. And as wealthy as somebody's partners is, the 30% they put down, they're not ready to necessarily re-up at 7% mortgage rates. So there's going to be a lot more transaction activity. But when I went through the valley of the market in 2008, 2009, that wasn't when the properties were being sold. Real estate digests news and information very slowly and tries to work with lenders for a matter of a year or two. So it really wasn't until 2011, 2012 that things were selling at good values with some volume in the market. So I think what you guys are going to be looking for in the next 6 months is still going to be a muted environment with still a big bid-ask spread between buyers and sellers. And I don't think the pipes are really going to be flowing until probably after the election.